conditional. Today we're told about the conditional ba never. Last week we looked at the to conditional and we saw that its peculiar characteristic was its exclusiveness, its implication that only one outcome is possible. In many cases we can use any or most of the conditionals without changing the meaning to any great extent. Each conditional has its own particular qualities. So today we're going to look at the special quality of ba never and some of the things it does and why it does them. First of all, what is ba never? Ba never is a helper which we put onto the e stem of the verb. The e stem is one of the lesser used stems, where ba never is one of the things that uses it. So, for golden verbs, we put it onto the e stem, and for ichidan verbs, as always, we simply take off the who and add its ichidan form reva. For the two irregular verbs, in this case they work exactly like regular ichidan verbs. So kuru becomes kureva and suru becomes sureva. Actually, kuru and suru, I would say, are bad ichidan verbs, but they're strong ichidan verbs. A strong verb is a verb that can change its vowel sound. In English we have come and came, yun, and ain't, and kuru and suru in some cases change their vowel sound. Kuru in the negative becomes klonai, suru becomes shunai. But in this case they don't change the vowel sound at all, so that's very simple. They just work like the ichidan verbs that they fundamentally are. For other tiers, we take off the e and use the helper kereva. You might notice that when we do anything with an adjective other than simply take off the and add whatever we're going to add, the specific adjectival modifications or danna, ka, hi, ku, ga, ko, were. So, the negative of an adjective is tsunai, omoshiroi, omoshiratunai. The past is ka, kya, omoshiroi, omoshirokata. And the ba conditional is chareva, omoshiroi, omoshirokereva. So in a way we could say, if adjectives had an e stem, it would be ka. And that's what we use in that case. So what's the special characteristic of ba never? So, as we know, its special characteristic is its exclusiveness. The special characteristic of ba never is that it is used for hypotheticals. So in multiple mean it can't ever mean when, because we never know for sure if a condition will take place. And consequently, if we use it about something that happened in the past, it has to be something that didn't happen. Because if it did happen, we wouldn't be dealing with a hypothesis. We would be dealing with a fact. Now this hypothetical nature of ba never allows it to be used in many common and very important Japanese expressions. For example, dosereba ii. What this literally means is, how if I act not be good? And I'll just note here that while suru is generally translated as do, in many cases the best way to render it into English is as act. So for example, if we say shizuka ni suru, we're not saying do quietly, we're saying act quietly. So, dosereba ni, how if I act will be good. And in English what we normally say is what should I do? And in Japanese we don't say that. And you'll see this is partly because the concept of should isn't quite the same in Japanese, and ba never is often used to solve the problem. We come back to that in a moment. Another common use of ba never is in sureva yokatta. For example, kasa omotte de kureva yokata. In English we would say, I should have bought an umbrella. What we're actually saying here is, if I had bought an umbrella, it would have been good. Monte as I've explained elsewhere, we join the word tani and the word come, to bread, tarin junya. And we notice that yokata serves it into the past tense. As you know, in Japanese, we mark the past tense at the end of a logical clause. So even if it may be true, that if it's raining right now, if I have bought an umbrella, it would have been good, and it still would be good. We throw the whole thing into the past tense with that final yokata. Kasa omo de kureba yokata. I should have bought an umbrella. I wish I had bought an umbrella. Now notice that in both these cases, those that are like the kasa omo de kureba yokata. We are using this, if it were done, it would be good to mean should. And this happens again in an even commoner Japanese construction. Benjo shinakereba ikemasen. If I don't study, it won't go, it won't do. Now what we say here is I must study. There actually isn't a word for must in Japanese, so we always construct it this way. We say if I don't, whatever it is, and then we can say it won't be good, it will be bad, it will be a disaster, whatever we say. Plum negative construction and follows this, and what we say is I must go, I've got to go, I've got to do this, I've got to do that. And this is because we don't have that construction got to, and we don't have must in Japanese. It always has this rather lengthy, if I don't do it, won't be good, if I don't do it, won't do, if I don't do, it's bad. Nakereba dame. And because it is indeed a very long-winded way of saying something common, like must or got to, it often gets cut down in casual speech to just shinakereba or even shinata, which is short for shinakereba, without adding the negative ending because that's just implied styling. Even in very casual speech, it's often said in full, and I think this is to emphasize the nature of the must. Nanse ikanakereba ikenai. Why have I got to can? In cases like that where we're putting stress on it as opposed to cases where we just think casually ikanacha, they've got to go. So this is the special characteristic of ba never, that it's dealing with hypotheticals. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comments below and I will answer as usual. I'd like to thank my gold Kokeshi patrons who make these videos possible, and all my patrons and supporters on Patreon and everywhere. And I'd like to thank you for attending this lesson. これからもよろしくお願いします。Task dismissed.